Hi, it's Sarah from Ruby and the Foxes, and we've made it to the end and finished knitting our little rainbow. Well done for making it this far. We've covered some quite advanced techniques. Now all that's left to do is sew in the ends. But if your piece of knitting is looking a little bit lumpy bumpy and it's curling at the edges, then you can block it before sewing in the ends. I'll do an extra little video tutorial showing you how to do this quite easily with an iron for acrylic yarn if that is what you've used. I'll now show you how I sew in the ends when I've finished a piece of knitting. I'm now going to show you how I sew in the ends when I've finished a project, and that's going to help tidy up the front where you can maybe see a few little holes or uneven stitches where we've switched yarn there. You're going to need a large wool needle for this, and here are all those ends we now need to sew in, which tends to be a Marmite thing for a lot of people. People either love it or hate it. So I'm going to show you what I would do. So I'll start off with these ones down the bottom where we joined in the yarn, because you can see where there's a gap where obviously we weren't able to attach it to the stitches we'd knitted beforehand, but the sewing in process allows us to do that. So I'm just going to thread my needle like so. And the key to this, wherever you've got a hole, is to basically start weaving into the loop that's right opposite it, and that will help close up that hole. Like so. Okay, and if we turn it around, we can see that gap has been bridged. I do find it's quite good to keep just checking the front side as you're sewing in, just to make sure the stitches you're sewing in aren't visible. And then basically it's just a case of weaving the yarn in and out up the edge of the colour block, and then you just turn around and weave back again so that it secures it. So I'm simply going to weave in and out of the first few stitches like that. Don't pull too tight, otherwise it'll bunch up your knitting. And then I'm going to turn it around and simply weave back and forth, back down again, like so. I'm just going to let that pull off there. I'm just going to give it a little tug, just so if it was pulled tight, it just loosens it a little bit. So from the front there, let's close that gap up nicely. And what you can do now with that little bit of yarn that's left is you can just snip it off. Like that. And then I'll just do the same along here as well. I'll let you into a little secret as well, which I think this is maybe breaking knitter rules, but if it's a project that's going to be purely for decorative purposes, so it's not going to have any heavy wear, I do actually sometimes, for pieces of yarn that are very close to each other like that, I'll just tie them in a knot. If it was a heavy wear item like a piece of clothing, it wouldn't be a great idea to do that because they can wriggle free. But I do this a lot and my knitting has never unravelled. So I'll tie that in a secure knot and then I'll snip it off, leaving a bit of length there just in case it did start to unravel. But like I say, for things that are purely for decorative, I think you can get away with that. One of the things that is great about a knitting project is you can hide a multitude of sins on the reverse of your work. So if you've had to join in additional yarn, all your loose ends are here, you can hide them away. Plus, if you've ended up where you've got some gapping, there are things you can tidy it all up at the back and no one can see that. And because it's a chunky thread as opposed to sewing where you couldn't really get away with it so much, whatever's going on at the back, it'll still look pretty good at the front. So I'm going to continue sewing in these edges and then I'll just show you what to do with the bits left at the beginning and the end of your piece. And there are our ends sewn in for the rainbow in the centre of our work. So I'll just quickly show you what to do with the tails at the beginning and the end of your piece of knitting, and it's pretty much the same process. Get on my needle. And I'm simply going to just weave in and out along the edge of my piece of knitting. Just a few stitches in should do. And I'm doing it on the wrong side, just inside the wrong side edge, so you won't be able to see it from the front. And then I'll just turn it around and go back the other way. And I'll stop just before the edge, so when I snip the end off, it doesn't stick out. There we go. So I've woven in along and then back again. And I'll just snip that off there. So that's from the inside, and from the outside of the work. You can't see where that was sewn in, and you can do exactly the same along the top edge there. I also quickly just wanted to show you another little trick for sewing up against Fair Isle edges. So here, say your floats were a little bit too long, and if you had like gaps up the side, I mean, that looks okay there, and this isn't too bad really, but I'm just wanted to show this as an example. If I pull that apart a little bit, there's gaps, but if so that those gaps were quite bad, you can fix that at the back of your work. So I've already woven in this piece. You want to ideally use the same colour yarn as your background so it doesn't show through on the other side. Let me just pull that apart as if there was a bit of a gap. And what I tend to do is I go into the first stitch on one side of the gap and then weave into a stitch on the other side of the gap, like so. Hopefully you can kind of see what I'm doing there. Into that. And into that. So just pulling it gently, you don't want to make it super tight. But there's things like this that you can do just to tidy things up if they're, you know, if it is looking a bit gappy at the front, because no one can see what's going on at the back once it's finished. Okay, hopefully that kind of made sense what I was doing there. So yes, I just work back and forth across where those two colours joined, and if I turn it around, you can see if I pull that apart, we don't have those gaps anymore. There is up here where I've not continued the stitching, so there you can see the difference. So that's a nice way to tidy up any gappy edges that you might have. So your piece is now finished and ready to display. So you may find you've got a bit of curling where you've knitted an edge without a border. Let me show you the difference between that and that. So by adding a border, it does smooth that out a little bit, which makes it a lot easier for hanging it up. But if you haven't done that, don't worry. Another good idea that you can do is pop it into a frame like this. So this is a box frame, and then you can just stick it into that, and obviously your edges don't curl anymore. I'll also do an additional tutorial to show how I steam block with an iron acrylic yarn. Do make sure it's suitable for the type of yarn that you're using, which does help a little bit with a bit of the curling. But I hope that's been enjoyable. I'd absolutely love to hear your feedback, and I'd also love to see the results if you followed along with my tutorials. If there's anything else you'd like me to show you, then please get in touch. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.